Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research-based information that fits your family. I'm Lori Cordles, parent of 3 in 2 different life stages. 2 are launched and 1 is still in high school, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of 2 littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator. Today, we'll talk about the realities of raising a family and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Science of Parenting podcast.
Welcome. Here we are, season 9, regulation.
Yes, we're here. Gonna be talking all about it. We've been talking about it all season, and there's a lot to say. There's a lot to
There
say,
is.
okay?
Yes. Who knew there was so much to say on how to maintain control?
Right?
I guess.
Kind of that.
Kind of, right?
Well,
Yes.
and we talked about understanding what regulation is and what
Mhm.
contributes to how we do or don't regulate. And now, yeah, we're gonna dig in a
The
little bit
why?
more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, in most of our research citations this whole season have come from a book called
The Handbook
Ha
of Parenting.
The Handbook of Parent like, what is
That's
the book
that
called?
book.
That book called The Handbook of Parenting, and
Oh.
specifically, this chapter is written by Dr. Wendy Grolnick, and so we have enjoyed sharing this whole season, this whole chapter, and just sharing with you that guess what? There really is a book all about
Mhm.
parenting, and it has
Mhm.
so many different research citations and references, and we maybe get a little nerdy about it, but we've enjoyed sharing the pieces and parts that we have this season with you.
Mhm. Yeah. And today we get to dig into a little bit more of the how do we build, right? How do we do things that support regulation? And so yeah, environment today, right?
Yes, seems like kind of another big abstract concept, but hopefully we'll be able to bring it down to a level of oh, that's what, oh, gosh, oh, yeah.
Right? And when we first talked about environment that supports regulation, I was like calming colors on the walls. That's the kind of stuff that immediately comes to mind when I think of an environment that promotes regulation. But this is really about kind of the climate kind of environment, right? That abstract, that relationship, the way we interact. And so going with that
Exactly.
Abstract, we have a little bit of it. We're gonna tap back into that theory
Yes.
from previous episodes, that
Yes.
self-determination theory. And this theory tells us about those basic needs, but it tells us that we can create an environment that supports the different kinds of regulation. That,
Mhm.
as parents, we can influence that. And so, DC and Ryan's theory tells us that everyone has those 3 basic needs, which are what, Lori?
They are autonomy
Mhm.
slash hashtag independence, right?
Yes.
Mastery, or those competencies, those skills that you have. And then the
Mhm.
third one is relatedness, or that idea of being connected to or belonging to something.
Yes, so basic needs of autonomy, mastery, and relatedness. So that
Yes.
everybody needs those things. And basically what we realize is when we can meet them, right? As parents, when you can help meet those needs for our kids, we're creating an environment that supports their regulation, right? So that's where this comes in, the environment. Though meeting those 3 needs creates an environment where it's just ripe for kids to be regulated. Parents too.
Exactly. Yes. And I think when you think about those 3 words, you know, every parent hopes their child will have a sense of autonomy or independence. Every
Yes.
parent hopes that their child can gain some mastery over the competencies and skills, and that
Mhm.
every parent wants their child to feel like they belong and are connected and have a purpose. So these
Mhm.
are really, eh, really important foundational needs that
Oh,
all
yeah.
human beings have. And then when you tie in the idea that really making a conscious effort to provide for these needs also does this whole other thing. I mean, like, it's like a huge parenting win.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
It's
own
a twofer.
personal opinion.
Yeah, it's a twofer for
It is
sure,
definitely.
that we want I think of, honestly, even if I might not hear parents say, "I want my child to have mastery," or "I want
Yes.
my child to have autonomy," we say things like, I hope they
Mhm.
have a job they're happy with or have a good job. That's
Yes.
mastery. I hope, like they can't live here forever, right?
Yeah.
That's independence or autonomy. And even just like, I hope they find relationships that feel good to them or they get
Mhm.
married or, right? That they find a purpose in the world. All of those things,
Right.
belonging or relatedness. So we wish for these things, even if we don't necessarily use these terms.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But I do want us to kind of slow down. We introduced these previously, but slowing down to reflect a little bit on them. So I wrote a little reflection question
Okay.
for each of us, all of us, listeners included, to reflect on our skills and our strengths and our assets as parents. So for autonomy,
Okay.
I would like to ask, in what areas do I support my child in being more independent or having more choice? So, in what ways do I support their autonomy? By being more independent, encouraging them to do that, or by having more choices?
Okay. So, gosh, I could go all the way back and think about when they were little, but I think I'm going to let
Hmm.
you take care of the littles.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. So thinking about my children at their ages, I mean, gosh, they're at the age where they really want to make their own choices and
Yes.
be independent and autonomous. And so my role at this point when it comes to those those idea of supporting their decisions, I mean, really is just acknowledging and supporting even the small decisions that go into the big decisions or
Yes.
the small steps that go into the big steps.
Mm.
Um, so something silly that I still do with them, even though they're, you know, 2 of them are in their 20s, is I still ask them, "Okay, what are your goals for this year?" And here it
Yes.
is February, and just last weekend, I was like, "Okay, I have goals from 1 of you. That means I still need goals from 2 of you."
Yes.
And I think that is supporting that idea that I desire for them to make independent choices and
Mm.
decisions that are important to them, but at the same time, I'm still trying to instill a little bit of, "Ooh, guess what? These little goals that you make are really gonna help you with big goals."
Yes. Yes.
Well, how
Oh,
about
I
you?
love that. Yeah. So, well, and it's different. Yeah. Because, we've talked about like littler kids have different needs, whatever. And so, yeah, bigger kids have different needs with
Mhm.
autonomy and independence because some of that they just straight up have.
They do.
um, so I would say one area where I feel like I'm working on or getting a little more successful at offering a little more choice or independence is really the food with my
Mm.
kids.
Yes.
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 So, you're just like, "Yeah, uh-huh."
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
we've really been focusing on so there's this concept called, like, division of responsibility when it comes to kids and parents and food. But basically, we choose my husband and I, my co-parent and I choose to offer, like, what we choose what the meal is typically, and our kids choose whether or not to eat it.
Mhm.
And that's like you can choose whether or not to eat it. We don't have like a try it bite in our house anymore. We used to. You don't have to try it. Our thing is like we're just gonna put some on your plate. And we also try to ask like, do you want a little or a lot of this
Mm.
thing?
Yes.
For our older daughter, she can like serve herself a lot of stuff, and so figuring out, do I want a little or a lot of this food? Do
Mhm.
I want just like I'm gonna put a single piece of corn on my
Yeah.
plate, or a full serving?
Mhm.
But so we've been working on offering more independence there, which it's been great because it also reduces the fight for us
Oh,
of
sure.
like meals are way more easygoing. Well, kind of.
Yes.
But it reduces that aspect of I have to like you have to eat this, you have to finish this.
Oh,
We don't
goodness.
we don't worry
Yes.
about that anymore, and it frees up space in my mind, and reduces conflict. And it's great for them because I do want them to, right? As I think about like regulating their own eating as
Mhm.
they're older, not I always have to finish my plate, but I know when I'm full, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Um, so that's been
And
a different thing.
that can be such a different value from family to family, from generation to
For
generation.
sure. For sure.
So yeah, I definitely know that my desire for my girls to make independent choices around what they were wearing to school or how their
Mm,
hair was done or what they ate for breakfast. Those are battles I just chose not to fight.
Yeah.
And that I think that was super important to me. I know that there were times where maybe other people, other family members might roll their eyes at the creative wardrobe that my children were
Creative
wearing,
expression.
the creative expression. But I just really felt like there were so many other things that were happening in the mornings that just really wasn't one that we had to
Yeah.
get to daycare by a certain time, and it was early, and
Yes.
yes. So yeah, that the independence and autonomy and just
Mhm.
celebrating the baby steps and creating baby steps.
Yes, and I think you're making a great point about, in parenting, pick your battles, all the time.
Yes.
But that autonomy and independence is about that. Which things do you feel strongly about, right? Do your values say, I need to influence this as a parent?
Mhm.
Um, and what things are you like, I don't have to? And
Yes.
yeah, what each of us would choose is a little different. So
Yes.
great point.
Yes.
Okay, second question.
Okay. Okay.
Mastery, right? Skill building, all those things.
Mhm.
In what areas of my life do I support my child's skill development or accomplishment?
Okay, so real talk here, listener alert. We talked through this before,
Uh-huh.
and we each had a little bit of difficulty trying to figure out what we did as parents to help our children's mastery. And
Mhm.
so I was stumped when Mackenzie asked me this first question. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know
And I
what I
was
did.
and I was fully expecting Laura to be like, "Bam, bam, bam, bam," because that's what I was thinking when
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, mastery. Lori's gonna have a million examples for this." She always like I feel like I constantly see examples of her doing this. And then she was like, "I don't know, I'm
I
stumped." And
got
I was like,
none.
"Okay."
I
And then
got
I was
nothing.
like, I mean, I'll list some right now, Lori.
Okay, yeah, you
Right?
list some. Okay.
Right? So I think, at the age your kids are that you encourage their like job exploration and, helping them get jobs and the skills that they need to build to do those things, to maintain jobs and the rules around that. I think of their formal education, right? You've given them independence, but also support their success in it. And I mean, your kids were a little younger, not like a totally different stage of life, but when I met you, even, I
Mhm.
think of just who's getting rides where and what are we planning to do about this activity you're involved in, and I just
Yes.
feel like you're constantly like, yeah girl, get it, like, to your kids.
I couldn't come up with a thing. But then Mackenzie in turn was like, I'm
Like,
not
I don't
sure
know,
either.
I
And I
can
was
think of
like,
stuff I don't do.
oh my goodness, what about your picture cards in the morning where your kids, they do their brush their teeth and they put their toothbrush card away and they put their shirt on and they put their shirt card away and they get their backpack and they get their shoes on, so I could list a whole bunch for Mackenzie. And then our wise
Mm,
writer, Barb Gunn Swanson, shared why this was so difficult for each of us. So you
right.
you share what Barb said.
Yes, so we did. We're like, why is this one so much harder?
Yes.
And of course, she had very specific points. She's like, one, it's hard because you're so involved in this,
Hmm.
right? And that it feels like something your kids are doing, not just something you're doing.
Yes.
So we pass that off to our children, like, well, they learned to do that. It's like, oh,
Yes.
wait, I guess I supported that. I had a
Yes.
role in that, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. And then also that it's incremental. And like when she said that
Mhm.
word, I was like, that's exactly what it is. Because the first time they did one tiny portion of this versus all the way, right? Lori's kids like have jobs and they're doing big things and adult things. And it's like, well, yeah, but the first step of that was learning to speak in public, right? Learning to have a
Yes.
conversation with someone. That those little
Yes.
tiny increments, it's hard to look back and see all those little pieces along the way because we were thinking about the big picture or we were
Right?
just trying to get through each day.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And the one thing
Yeah.
I just wanted to quick point out is that when we're talking about mastery, we are not talking about perfection.
Oh,
We
yeah, good clarification.
we're not talking about doing something perfectly. We're just talking about taking those steps to get dressed in the morning before school. We're talking
Yes.
about taking, like you said, taking those steps to be able to be a public speaker. So,
Mhm.
it's a different thing. It's those steps along the way that brought us to where we are.
Yes, and I think of, like a lot of our older kids are involved in activities.
Mhm.
And a lot of what they do there is mastery, right? Working on mastering that free throw. Not because they need to make every single free throw they ever shoot, but
Exactly.
the form, the practice, right? And the improvement. We're talking about the progress and
Mhm.
improvement. That's really
Yes.
mastery. The
Yes.
skill building is kind of what I like to think of it as. So that one's
Yes.
mastery. Well, and the other thing, I was like, I can think of the things that get in the way of
Right.
me offering master, like me encouraging mastery.
Let me tell
I
you what I
mean,
did when I messed it up.
right, right.
Like
And Barb was like, well, really? Like, and she talks about it so kindly. She's like,
she does.
there are barriers that get in the way that are in the realities of our day. And so I was like, okay, I have a list.
Mhm.
I have a list.
I have a list.
One of which is impatience,
Mm.
right? That like I get impatient. And I'm like, yeah, you should. My example, my toddler is old enough and physically capable, probably, of like his muscles are strong enough
Yeah.
to get himself dressed in the morning. He's coordinated enough, he could probably figure that out. No, no, we got places to be. Like,
Yeah.
it's time. So we do that. And so I'm like, at some point, I
Yes.
will encourage your mastery to get yourself dressed. Not
Yes.
yet.
Yes.
And then another one that, as we were talking through it, a lack of specific instruction, which kind of goes like
Mm.
hand in hand with impatience, but like
Yes.
sometimes it's like, you should just know how to do this. And that can get
Mhm.
in the way of the mastering something because someone had to teach me, my mother-in-law jokes. She thinks that meme is the funniest about like, you laugh at me with my smartphone that you have to teach me that. I had to teach you how to use a spoon.
Right? Yes. Yes.
Right? And that's as parents, we teach them how to use spoons and all those
Mhm.
things. So that gets in
Yes.
the way for me a little with the
Those barriers
mastery.
to mastery. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it is so much easier for us to,
Yeah.
come down on ourselves instead of recognizing all those little things that we did to help our kids achieve mastery.
Yes, to like keep going and to
Yeah.
build their skills and oh yeah.
So everyone take a
Okay.
moment right now, pat yourselves on the back. Start to recognize those little things that you did. Yes.
Yes, that ways we encourage our kids to grow for sure.
We do. All right.
Okay, another one more question, right?
One
There's
more okay,
3
one more
basic needs.
yes.
One more, relatedness or belonging, connection. In
Okay.
what areas do I support my child's meaningful connections with myself and others around them?
In what ways do I support meaningful? Okay. So this one I definitely think comes into a different realm of that depends.
Okay.
So it depends on my child's temperament, their
Mm,
age, their ability. So I'm thinking of this from this perspective. My child who has a different ability, I was very involved in making conscious efforts to
mhm.
find ways for her to feel like she belonged, that she was
Yes.
connected to other people, because that was where her disability impacted her the most. And
Yeah.
so additionally, my older daughter sometimes has these introverted tendencies, and so even when she
Oh,
was younger,
yeah.
I would do the same thing,
Mhm.
try and open up opportunities for her to connect and feel like she belonged, or try different activities, etc. And so depending on their age, depending on their temperament, and honestly depending on their abilities, I was either very very purposely and consciously involved in different ways to get them to feel connected or to feel like they
Yeah.
belonged in different places.
I love that. So yes, temperament is what came to mind for me. I have
Mhm.
slow to warm up kids. And so sometimes the like nerves,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I do I'm intentional about looking for opportunities where my kids can, even like my daughter being in school now, opportunities to meet new kids in like smaller group settings. So that's like activities, that's programs at the YMCA, that's
Mhm.
but they get to practice some of those skills of okay, new people and I can make connections with them. And I can say as an extrovert, sometimes I needed coaching on like meaningful connection and not hop hop hop. Um
Exactly. Exactly.
um well, and then the other one I also kind of think of is, I mean, belonging also happens within our like small family unit.
Mhm.
And so one of the ways we have connection in our family is just like some of those routines and rituals, right? The
Mhm.
the meal times, the bedtimes, the weekend snuggles, all of those little things, those all help build the belonging and connection too.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Or
yeah.
like those, okay, so those three basic needs,
Yes.
essentially. Yeah.
And so that those needs, I know we were talking about it and I'm like, it almost feels like one step separated. The
Yeah.
season's on regulation. What are
I
we talking
know.
about?
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, we can create an environment by meeting those
Mhm.
needs, which will, ooh, I got excited, hit my mic. Um, that promotes regulation. That
Mhm.
environment will promote the regulation. So,
Yes.
and the one that this chapter we were citing really honed in on was autonomy.
Mhm.
And in part, I think it's because there's a lot of research out there on that one.
There
so
is.
so I think there's a lot to back that up. So we really dug into that. One citation, for example, from Grown Like was talking about so kids who engage with adults and those adults help them develop autonomy, right? So when kids are around adults that help them develop autonomy, those kids tend to be more intrinsically motivated.
Mhm.
AKA, they do certain things, behave certain ways because they believe those behaviors are important, right?
Yes.
Like brushing their teeth, like behaving like treating people kindly. But
Yes.
that they're doing those things because they believe them and not just because they were told to.
Exactly.
So that's an interesting thing about autonomy. The more we can give them choice and independence with those things, the more they develop that internal motivation.
And the
And
2.5, right? So then
yeah.
the little extra piece of tidbit that comes from research says the more that we do that, the more we support their independence and autonomy, the more they internalize it, and the more research says teachers at school actually report that they're making better choices at school too, that they
Mhm.
are internalizing in a way that goes beyond the household, that it
Yes.
rolls into those community experiences, and that it not only impacts their behavior, but also their learning. And so we can
Mhm.
give our children more choices and autonomy and support and encourage it. We're also impacting their school behavior and learning. So how
Yes.
cool is that, right? There's not a parent around that doesn't want to give their child the best opportunity at school learning, right? So, gosh, one way to
Absolutely.
do that is to help support independence and autonomy at home as they grow.
And I honestly feel like that's great news for us as parents. I'm always looking for a chance that it's like, oh, that's a win for us. That's not more work, that's less
Yeah.
work. Because in
Yes.
my mind, right, with my kids being little, I look forward to any independence they develop because it means I don't have to do it for them.
Yes.
Right? Like, I don't have
Yes.
to get you dressed because you know how. Maybe I'll think of that someday.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get there. But
And
so I think that's great news.
it is, and the other side of that is that for the parent that is thinking, "But oh man, but I like it a certain
Mm,
way. I like to have
mm,
the drawers look like this. I want to
yeah.
have the toys put like this. I want to make sure that, everything is in its place, including the cowlick on my kid's head is in place, right?" So we are, as parents, going to have to give up some of that control. We're going to have to stop some of that helicoptering. We're going to stop that
Mhm.
authoritarian guidance, because we need to allow our child to grow into being an autonomous and independent adult. And that
Yes.
happens when they're younger. It doesn't, we
Yes.
don't suddenly just turn it off when they turn 18
Yes,
and technically, according to textbooks, become adults. We've got to start that process way before. And so sometimes it's a matter of teaching ourselves. It's
absolutely,
We have to help
absolutely.
ourselves to help our
Mhm.
kids.
Yes, and that talking about, like, okay, we're the adult here, right? We talked
Yeah.
about that in a previous episode, like, I've gotta regulate, I've gotta figure
Mhm.
out my attitudes and beliefs
Yes.
around some of these things with my kids. I gotta reflect on those,
Mhm.
so that I can help them be independent. But, okay, one thing is, we talk about autonomy, we talk about independence, and I think there is a connotation for some, right? So
Mhm.
like those words are kind of synonyms. They kind of mean the same thing, but maybe one word, right? Like so the word independence for some people, and even as a parent yourself, you might be thinking, I don't want overly independent kids.
Mm.
Right? Maybe you're thinking, well, I want my kids to need me.
Mhm.
Or maybe you're thinking, I want them to have our values. And if they
Mhm.
get too independent, right, they won't have our family values.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important for us to recognize too what that connotation is. And maybe it's
Yes.
related to the way we were raised and whether we liked it or didn't. Right? Maybe
Exactly.
we felt like we were under so much control. We're like, hey, free spirit children. And so it can be
Yes.
different for everybody and how that value of independence, um, I mean, yeah, I want to say like how it manifests, um, how important it is to you, but also I think the other great news for parents is like, okay, yes, research tells us some independence and autonomy is helpful for our kids.
Mhm.
And there's great news that we can decide which areas make the most sense to give it in.
Yes.
But figuring out so that we can encourage it. So, I mean, that was a lot. I said a lot, but
Yeah. But ultimately, parenting is value laden, right?
oh,
And we
yeah.
look to our own lived experiences
Mhm.
to make decisions for our kids. And that's an important piece of, research tells us X, and then we have to recognize, are we coming at this from our values? Are we coming at this from our past? And how do we put
Yes.
those three together? That's
Mhm.
what research and reality is all about at the Science of
All about.
Parenting.
Yes. Well, and
Right?
we even talked about, so I'm like, okay, this word, my first thought when I was like autonomy and independence, wow, they're really connected. And I'm like, of course they're connected. They basically mean the same thing. And that was when I was like, wait, my brain is telling me something. And like independence was a word that, yeah, like I recognized that wasn't always desired
Mhm.
at like in every stage. But then I was like, autonomy, that's the term I learned in my undergraduate program. So that was like autonomy, good. But I hadn't like unlearned that sometimes independence was bad. And so I was like, wait,
Yes.
those are the same thing. Okay. Okay. Here we go.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, so let's go ahead and I mean, yes, we can each have our feelings about this, but let's go ahead and move on to those different types of regulation. Now remember, we're talking about how when we create an environment where kids can have those basic needs met, that it helps them regulate.
Yes.
Let's talk about what that regulated, I was gonna say behavior, cognition, and emotions, all three kinds.
Yes.
Let's look at those different kinds and what that looks like. Because I think there's examples of regulation that aren't what naturally come to mind for us. So,
Yeah, I think you're right.
so I'll start with behavior. I
Okay.
don't know, the obvious one, it kind of feels like. But so what does regulated behavior look like when kids' needs are met? It can be something as simple as they have good habits.
Mhm.
That's regulated behavior. I always choose brushing my teeth. I don't know if I'm really worried my kids won't or something. I always say brushing their teeth. But showering, even just habits like I eat when I'm hungry, or I have good time management or work-life balance,
Mhm.
or there's all kinds of different habits. But habits are a form of regulated behavior. I
Mhm.
do this thing because it's an internal motivation that I just do it. Another regulated behavior is independence, right? That our kids, oh, I can just go do that. Like my daughter getting herself up in the morning now. That's regulated behavior. She does it of her own accord.
Mhm.
And so again, that's regulation. And then another one is just that ability to engage with family and friends. They
Mhm.
when they feel connected, right? They have that need met, they can engage comfortably with people around them, and for some even strangers and other people and acquaintances. And so that when those needs are met, regular behavior is regulated or can be more
Yes.
often. It
Yes.
creates an environment for it, it's ripe for it.
It's ripe for it. Yes. Okay, so I will do the thinking piece, right? So
Yes.
when our needs are met, right? What do we think about ourselves? What do we
Mm,
believe about ourselves?
yeah,
Um
regulated cognition.
Regulated cognition, that's a big word.
Right.
So when we look at that, I see in my mind this calm, cool, collected behavior,
Mm,
which allows me to be in my upstairs brain, right?
mhm. Season
Season
1.
season one allows me to be in my upstairs brain, which helps me make good decisions, right?
Mhm.
I believe that my caregiver will be able to take care of me.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a core belief.
I have the ability, I'm self-regulated to have some control, make choices.
Mhm.
I believe that I'm capable. So I'm in this kind of calm, cool, and collected mindset.
Yes.
I envision myself, just repeating this mantra to myself when I'm self-regulated, correct? So
Yeah.
I am capable. I can do it. I have the ability, and I'm in my upstairs brain, which means,
Yeah.
all cylinders are clicking.
Yeah, you're reasonable, right? You're
Yes, I
logical
am
when you're in your
reasonable
upstairs
and
brain.
logical.
Hopefully. But when we're
Yes.
regulated, right? Like,
Yes.
and even that can be like, I recognize I need to calm down. That's
Absolutely.
regulated cognition for sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And then the last one are the emotions. So emotions when we are feeling more regulated, which you could kind of take this either way. Like, what are the emotions when you feel regulated, or what is emotional regulation? Okay, I'm
Yeah,
like it's kind of
both.
both. There's philosophy, but so emotions that our kids experience when those needs are met. So when we have an environment where those needs are met, their emotional regulation is like when they feel secure. Right? I know
Yes.
what to expect. I feel safe. I know my needs are met. I also think of like happy and content. That's a
Mm,
regulated emotion. When I feel regulated, when I'm in my upstairs brain,
mhm.
um, that yeah, I have my needs met. I'm happy. I'm content. And not that, I mean, not that I don't have children or one in particular that tell that's unfair, right?
Yeah.
Not eternally content. Lots of unfair around here, but that the emotions of being regulated, even just like loved is an
Mhm,
emotion. And so thinking about emotional regulation and those three basic needs, when they're met, our kids are able to regulate their emotions better. But I also think the important thing to say, and I'm like, how did we get this far without saying it? um when our kids feel safe with us,
mhm.
when they have those basic needs met, sometimes that means we're the place they feel safe to be dysregulated.
Absolutely.
We're the place where they're like, "Okay, I have had it together all day and I'm exhausted of it all
Exactly.
together." And so then the behavior might be a little bit more difficult for us to handle as parents, or that attitude comes out, or
Yes.
or they're like need to like be alone or whatever that is. And so all of those things, meeting those needs creates an environment that can help our kids regulate is really the big takeaway, and regulate in lots of different ways. And so recognizing how our kids regulate, that's another thing I liked about this list, was like not just what those regulation things are, but like, oh, I didn't even, yeah, habits. That's them
Yes.
regulating their behavior. Okay,
That
cool.
yes.
Hmm.
And I even in the thinking, just that whole idea of calm, cool, collected thinking. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
providing that environment and climate to take a big deep breath
Yeah.
when I'm feeling dysregulated, but I belong in this climate
Yes.
where
And I'm
it's calm, cool,
loved
and
and
collected.
yes. Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
so good. Okay, so
Okay,
that brings
strategies.
us, yes, so
Strategies. Okay.
strategies.
Put some
Every
strategies in
time,
my toolbox.
right? And
Right.
every time we always try to look at like, here's a little research.
Mhm.
We toss it out there with a dose of our own reality. And we want you to have strategies for what this looks like in your day to day. Cause you're like,
Yes.
okay, cool, abstract needs.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
How do I do
Right?
that?
So Grolnick in their chapter and their colleagues actually, they had a lot of great ideas. So we took some of those and then we added a few of our own ideas here. And so we put them in categories by which need we felt like they helped meet, but some of them we kind of felt like could have been in more than one.
Yes.
Um, but so let's
Yes.
start with autonomy. So
Okay.
how do we meet kids' basic need for autonomy, independence, choice? One
Okay.
of them simply is to just provide rationale for things like rules and expectations. If we want them to internalize that, right? We learned that's the magic trick of regulation. If we want them to internalize it, it's like, because I said so probably won't cut it.
Mhm.
If they only do it because you say so, it's not
But please, can't I
internalized.
just say because I said
It
so?
takes a lot less thought for me, let's be honest. But
Uh,
giving that rationale of like, I can't let you go because,
yes.
right? Or the reason this is a rule in our house is because. So that's one. Another one is, this is kind of related to consequences, but helping kids understand the consequences of their choices. And sometimes that
Yes.
means the consequences of them on others.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think I automatically, of course, my brain is like natural and logical consequences. Natural consequences are what you let happen.
Mhm.
So, I always talk about the coat. If I
Yes.
let my daughter, you can go out without your coat. The natural consequences is you might be cold. And
Yes.
sometimes she's not, right? Sometimes there's no
No.
consequence at all besides she's
Exactly.
comfortable.
Yes.
Um, but so letting our kids experience those consequences, or sometimes implementing a logical consequence, something that's
Mhm.
related, like, okay, you were dishonest with me about this. Now I'm not able to trust you to have this privilege. Um,
Exactly.
and so helping them understand the impact of their behavior. The other one, which I feel like we've kind of said the whole time, is providing choices, right?
Yes.
And of course, there's the obvious ones like the red cup or the blue cup, but it can also be things like letting them choose what to wear, letting them choose the music they listen to. It can be things like which friends they enjoy spending time with most.
Right.
And so figuring out what choices are ones that you're okay with offering.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So that's autonomy. And then, few more.
Okay, so the three basic needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So, in competence, or that idea of
Yes.
mastery skills, what are some things that we can do to help our child in that area? So, one thing
Yes.
that I kind of love this one, and so I'm so glad that I got to do competence and mastery. Is just that idea of creating consistency, whether it's the
Mm,
routines or the rules, that structure. Um, I'm not a great scheduler. Um, and when it
I love
comes
that
to,
differentiation of that
yes,
word.
schedules and routines, that was what that was season one,
Bonus
too.
episode. That was a
Bonus
bonus
episode.
episode on
Yes,
routines and
yes.
rituals. Yeah.
Routines and rituals. And so the idea of helping to create mastery with consistency, with
Mhm.
habits, with routines and rules. These are things that you can practice regularly. So
Yes.
maybe little dude gets to put on his socks first,
Yes.
right? And we're creating the habit, the mastery of him learning to put on his own clothes in the morning, but it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be the whole outfit,
Yes, we
right?
can start.
We can start. He can put his own socks on.
Mhm.
And then the idea of establishing these expectations of what do we expect their behavior to look like? What do we expect
Mhm.
their behavior to look like at home, around us? What do we expect their behavior to look like around other adults
Mhm.
outside of the home? And this really reflects our family's values. And so, helping them to create mastery expectations. Give them and
Yes.
tell them what the expectations are instead of, well, what I expect. That's just what I
Mm.
expect. Okay, but wait, I need you to tell me. Um,
Mhm.
Brene Brown talks about paint it done. Like, what does done
Yes.
look like? What does the end of that expectation look
Yes.
like? Right. So,
Mhm.
that really is something that is hinging on our family's values. And again, along with that is reinforcing those desired behaviors. So, we've said
Yeah.
this before: catch them being good, acknowledge the things that they're doing that are stepping stones to those big desired behaviors.
Absolutely.
Wow, I'm super glad that you found a ride for yourself. This shows me that you're thinking about how you're getting there, how you're getting home. And then when it's time for you to drive, I know that you've kind of thought about things from beginning to end.
Yes.
Um,
And that whole concept of catch them being good
yes.
reminds me, okay, one that I skipped. One that I skipped in the autonomy section, the not overusing external rewards.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
a natural reward can be, I noticed you did that. That
Hmm.
reinforces the behavior. It doesn't always have to be, I mean, not that there's no place for it, but not overusing things like sticker charts or you'll get this if you this.
Yes.
And so because yeah, catching them being good is a way to reinforce
Yes.
behavior by itself.
I love it when Barb talks about knucks, right? Just
Yeah,
give
you
me
get
give me some
nuts.
knuckles. Those are knucks. I'm like, knucks? Oh, knuckles. Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Knuckles together. Got it. Yeah, they
Yes,
can be
and that's
simple.
reinforcement.
It is
Yeah.
absolutely. Thumbs up, high fives, just the
Mhm.
shake, the nod of the head, and that approval reinforces
Yes,
those desired behaviors. Um,
definitely. Okay, and then
yeah.
one more category.
Okay.
So this idea of relatedness or belonging, finding ways to be involved in what your kids are involved in.
Mm,
Sometimes that's being the coach. Sometimes that's asking how things went. Sometimes it's just paying attention,
yes.
right? And that can mean paying attention when they're telling us about stuff that seems minor in the real world of adulthood, but is a big deal to them.
Or you've heard it 65 times already.
Yeah, also
Yes,
that.
you still gotta pay attention.
Right? It can require us, I mean, let's be honest, putting our phones down or
Oh,
putting
yes.
aside whatever the distractions are that can infiltrate that connectedness. You
Yes.
know, also just being intentional about what had Barb say, expressing affection. Whether that
Yes.
is physical affections, hugs, snuggling, whether that is
Mhm.
saying I love you or I'm proud of you, any of those things, that
Mhm.
expressions of affection. And then, of course, we're encouraging them to have connection with other people outside of our family too. And again,
Absolutely.
whatever makes sense for your family and your own reality.
Yes. Yes.
So, all kinds of tools and tricks to fill that toolbox.
Long list, and you don't have to use the same one on every child.
No, and you don't have to use them all.
Exactly. So many
Yeah, it's
tools.
okay to choose one and be like, "Hey, I could do that." Or
I can
maybe
do that
you're
one.
like, "I feel fantastic in one of these areas and
Mhm.
feel like I need to work on one of the others." That's cool too. Take
Absolutely.
take what you need.
Take what you need. Okay, so this brings us to our Stop, Breathe, Talk segment of the podcast. And this is where we typically bring our producer in to allow us to practice that flagship technique of Stop, Breathe, Talk. But this week, just as with this whole season, we have been bringing in our writer, Barb Dunn Swanson. She has a passion for this topic of self regulation. And so you've heard us talk about the phrases and words she's shared with us and helping us
Yes.
get through that idea of I have no idea how I've helped my child master things.
Right.
So
She
welcome,
walks us through it
Barb.
all.
Yeah, welcome, Barb.
Oh my goodness. You give me far too much credit. I think that when we walk through each of these episodes, we do so much exploration and talking with one another.
We do.
And the four of us together make this great team. And the ideas that we talk about really help each other think through experiences we've all been through
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
help us put these episodes together. So the credit is
Mhm.
really uh, for ourselves
For
as
all
a
of us.
team. Yeah, for all of
Yes.
us. So,
I feel like we get a little credit in our faces being on this every week, and we want to make sure they know there's a genius
Exactly.
that's not here on the screen.
well, I
Yeah.
I thank you for the shout out. I do.
Mm,
And I want to start by just acknowledging what we talked about right at the top
yeah.
was this was about our environments.
Mhm.
Mm,
And the first environment is the family home, right?
mm,
Mhm.
yes.
And parents as their first educators. And so parents are the ones who are the first models of what regulation looks like.
Yes.
And so parents who are regulated and who have boundaries and who set limits and who show and offer choices for independence,
Mm.
Hmm.
they will get the benefit of kids who will try to
Mhm.
become independent and who will try to meet their parents' expectations. The kids will
Yes.
try. But we know there are so many other factors. We've talked about
Hmm.
how important temperament is.
Yes.
Yes.
The foundation of who we are as individuals, our gifts, those temperament traits are our gifts to the world.
Yes.
And so it plays, those temperament traits play a big role in how our children are regulated, whether they get
Absolutely.
upset easily or whether they're able to manage those emotions, whether
Hmm.
they are upset by something an adult says to them, or whether they can take a little bit of criticism or
Yeah.
helpful advice from somebody. I
Yes.
wanted to ask you to think about this one thing.
Okay.
Alignment. The word I'm gonna
Ooh.
use, alignment.
Okay.
When you have a child that is having a really difficult time,
Mm.
maybe they're having some of those big emotions, and you know that you as the adult have to get regulated first before you can help them get regulated.
Still the
We
adult here.
we
Rude.
call that co-regulating. We wanna co-regulate with them. We don't expect kids to know how to do it. we have to, help them. How
Mhm.
do you align with that child that's really having a hard time? What is it that you
Mhm.
can say to align with them so they know you're in their corner? You might not like the behavior, but you are going to align with them to get them through that first few minutes of that really tough time they're having.
Mm.
It's
I get to
this
go.
is a tough one.
I get to
Okay,
go.
you go.
Go.
Finger on the
Lori was
nose, finger
thinking
on the
quick.
nose.
She's thinking quick today.
So I could visually see myself in a couple, and actually I think all three children went through my brain, and I could visually see myself physically get into alignment with them. So
Mm.
oftentimes the dysregulated child drops to the floor, right?
Oh, yes.
Or they lash out. And so I could visually in my mind see myself get down onto the floor. I could visually see myself drop my shoulders and take that big deep breath, and I could hear myself begin to take in that deep breath as well. And like I said, I can vividly remember me getting down on the floor, even laying flat on my belly,
Mm.
in one particular instance
Yeah.
with a child. And I can hear myself with the tone I have of calm, quieter, slower, just kind of getting my whole physical body into alignment with the child so that I can begin to bring their dysregulation into a regulated state.
Mhm.
Sometimes that involved needing to start there on the floor and then move to a chair with them on my lap, or just move
Yes.
to me sitting on the floor with them on my lap. Oftentimes there were no words spoken. It
Mm.
was just me. Maybe I was humming their favorite song, or maybe I was saying something like, "Oh, this is hard, isn't it? I can tell this is super hard. I can see that, your body is telling me this is super hard for you." So
Yes.
that's the first thing that
Mm.
came into my brain. Those are my word pictures.
I know. I was like, how visual of you, Lori. So atypical.
That's a new one.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love that. And it's not what I thought of.
Oh,
So
good.
I love that too. So I thought of like aligning with their experience, I guess,
Oh,
like not in like a physical way. So I
yes.
think of aligning and like I could understand why you feel that way.
Mhm.
Or I could understand, so trying to like validate the reason for
Mhm.
something, the reason they might be dysregulated, even if it's just something like they're grouchy. Like, I could understand why you're feeling,
Mhm.
we always say like why you're feeling like a grouch. Why you're feeling like a grouch. We stayed up late last night and it's
Mhm.
been a long day. We've been busy. So trying to validate, I guess, is one way I align. But I mean, I think I've said this before, but also trying to align with their needs. And so
Mhm.
one of the questions is always like, do you want help or do you want space?
Mm.
And I have found typically my oldest wants help and typically my youngest wants space. So like when
Okay.
they're dysregulated, one wants more from me and one
Mhm.
wants like, hey, way less. Like get out of my bubble while
Yes.
I'm having a hard time. And so yeah, so I guess yeah, that idea of alignment.
I
It
love
does,
that.
it looks different.
Mhm.
I
I
like
love that,
that.
Barb.
Yeah, I
Yes.
like that just simply because I think sometimes we need where do we begin?
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe alignment is the very first step. And
Mhm.
Mm,
then we take it from there. Once our child knows, you've put it all together in this episode that we care for them, that we're going to
Mhm.
take care of them, and we are concerned for their well-being, and we want them regulated. We want them to become independent. We want them to master. They do belong to
Mhm.
us as family. Once they know all those things and we can align with them, maybe that's just really the first step. So thank you for taking that
yes.
question
Aw,
today.
that was awesome.
Yeah, thanks,
Good
Barb.
question.
I hadn't
Yeah.
even thought of alignment. I'm really
I
glad we didn't get all the way through it and miss that one.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Barb. We do. We love to have her little insight and her thought process coming in here with us. Um, so yeah, that's where we're at, looking at today at how we create an environment that supports regulation, and that the way we do that is by helping create opportunities where our kids'
Mhm.
internal needs are met. Those needs for independence or autonomy, mastery or skills, and relatedness or belonging. That connection. And so looking for those opportunities that our kids benefit and that we benefit, and it helps them be more regulated.
It is. So, thanks for joining us today on the Science of Parenting podcast. And in case you haven't heard, if you have specific parenting questions, you can actually email our team at parenting@iastate.edu. Don't be afraid to reach out.
hmm Please do come along with us as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Lori Kothals and Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.